Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. It's lunch on day 3 of the World Test Championship final, and India, in reply to Australia's first innings of 469, are 6 for 260. It's been a brilliant Test match so far. I'm thrilled to be joined by Charbel, the co-host of the Cricblog podcast, also a curator of Cricblog. Charbel, you and I did quite a few shows together for Cricket Daily, but welcome to Cricket
Yes.
Unfiltered, stepping in for Paul.
Thanks, Menas. Bit of a downgrade maybe from Paul, but no, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. Let's pick it up where Paul and I left off. We recorded at lunch yesterday, and then I thought Australia, the low order was a really nice little 48 from Alex
Yeah.
Carey that just got the score up to 469. I think they would have been disappointed to get any less than that, given the start that Head and Smith gave them. So nice stuff from Carey with his 48. What did you think of it?
He was looking so good, and then that reverse sweep came out, man. I was
Oh,
like,
no, not again.
why? Because the ball before was exactly the same, and he pumped it down the ground for 6, and then he went for that reverse. The next ball, I'm like, why? You're playing so well straight, and yeah, I think I read it was like the 5 of his last 7 dismissals have been off the reverse, but
Oh,
so
God.
it could have been more. But look, 469, I think on that wicket, that for me it's still not flat. That's a big score, thanks to Smith and Head in particular. But yeah, I thought we were in a great position yesterday, but a bit disappointed after this first session today, where I'm trying to think back to what happened yesterday.
Yeah, well, they've
After-
been very patchy. But just before we
yeah,
move on to the Australia's tail, Stark, Cummins, Lyon bowling, they didn't
yeah,
contribute much. But I thought India's bowling was patchy. So I actually thought
yeah.
at times Siraj especially looked pretty hostile and dangerous. But if I'm looking at their bowling, I think Jadeja was actually probably the most consistent bowler. Like, what did you think of the Indian attack's performance? Obviously, a little bit down.
Patchy for sure. And I think when we talk about the IPL finishing 10 days before, we talk about the batsmen adjusting, but it's also the bowlers, because these guys are bowling a different ball every ball in T20 cricket. There's no it's Test cricket's so different that you've got to hit the spot regularly, ball after ball, and you can see India really struggle with that. In the IPL, you're training for 2 months, bowl a slower ball bouncer, then a Yorker, then a wide Yorker, and you've got to bowl a different ball every ball, otherwise you're going to get smashed. So I felt they really struggled with their consistency, and that's why Australia sort of pounced, and Travis Head was able to get away really quickly, and Smith just sort of sat on the bowlers and took it from there. So yeah, I think you'll be a bit disappointed. I think they really miss Bumrah, of course, bowler of
Yes,
his class.
absolutely.
No doubt about that. But yeah,
Where
I
were you
think
on the
that,
selection? Paul was saying he thought
yeah,
maybe Unadkat should have played.
I thought Udnadkat would play too if they were going to play a 4-man attack just for that left arm angle. But
Mm.
first and foremost, I thought given the pitch conditions and the dry weather in London recently, you might have got Ashwin in that side. But yeah, I think just all in
Yeah,
all, as a
it's really
unit, they could have been a
strange
bit better. India,
not to
yeah,
have Ashwin in there. Very
Mm,
strange not to have Ashwin there,
I
given
think
the way
so.
the pitch is playing. I think
I
they've
think they're
misread that
scarred.
one.
They're scarred from 2 years ago. They played Ashwin and Jadeja, but the conditions were so different against New Zealand in
Yes.
that final. So yeah,
So
I think
then,
they've missed the trick in this one.
so Australia 469, very good score. They come out
Yeah,
to bowl, and immediately Rohit Sharma, well, not immediately, he's out for 15. LBW off Pat Cummins, and the first wicket falls at 30. And then very quickly after that, Shubman Gill bowled by an absolute peach from Scott Boland, and that he left that one and it cannoned into the stumps. And what did you think of Australia's sort of new ball bowling and the way India handled it?
yeah, it was a bit shaky the first couple of overs, but I was in support of the decision to sort of take Stark off after an expensive couple and give Boland a shot with the hard
Mm.
new ball. And I was looking forward to seeing him the most on that sort of pitch where it's just doing a little bit and he hits the spot all the time. So we were in a terrific position after those opening bursts from Cummins and Boland, and then Stark came back. So I thought we bowled really well yesterday, particularly in the early stages. And you saw the difference between the Aussie attack and the India attack in terms of the consistency and asking regular questions. So I hope the boys can get back to that in the second session here.
Yeah, Cameron Green was very good getting out Cheteshwar Pujara for 14. And
Yeah,
at that stage,
yeah,
when India were 3 for 50, and then Stark, a ripper to get Kohli. I mean, I've seen a lot of Indian media today carrying on like that was the ball of the century that got Kohli. I don't think it was the ball of the century. It was a good ball, but it lifted a bit. But, at that stage, India 4 for 71. And you're thinking
yep,
there Australia can really take control, but what a story! Ajinkya Rahane dropped, recalled after some fine form in the IPL, and he's 89 not out now. He's lifted India from that perilous position of 4 for 71 to 6 for 260. He's got some good support, but he's had a little bit of luck. So early on in his innings, he was out
yeah.
LBW off Cummins, and Cummins overstepped. And then today, Cummins has done it again to Shardul
Can't
Thakur.
believe
Now,
it.
Cummins is having a shocker. People say I'm too harsh on Cummins' captaincy. That's 2 wickets off no balls. I think Lyon hasn't bowled enough. This has been
Yep.
a very, very poor performance from Pat Cummins, the skipper.
There's been questionable decisions, man. I thought the Nathan Lyon thing he wasn't using him, and I was wondering why. It's sort of the situation earlier on in the session required a bit of a change of pace, something a bit different. Maybe try get Shardul Thakur to do something a bit different, and then you always have a fast bowler on the other end anyway. But you see what Nathan Lyon can get. He got the wicket, very early in his spell last night, the big one.
Yeah, got
So I was very
Jadeja. That was a nice little
yeah,
partnership from
exactly.
Jadeja and Rahane,
Mm.
and then he comes in second over, gets a wicket, and we didn't see him at all in that first hour
Yeah,
today.
it was strange. It was strange, and yeah, but I thought the maybe as well. I think having a deep point to tackle makes no sense to me. He's been squaring up right throughout his innings, as well as he's played and the fight that he's shown. He's squared up a lot. So you want to have at least two fielders in that gully point region for that edge. I know Cameron Green dropped one, but if you get the ball in and around off stump, that's the problem as well with Australia in this session. They bowled both sides of the wicket. They weren't patient enough. But you get the ball in and around off stump in the channel. Shardul Thakur has been squaring up, and you can get those fielders in and around that point region. But he's only had that one fielder then giving easy singles away. So yeah, I hope we can just
Hasn't
get
been
our
good.
act together quickly. Yeah, in the second session,
Uh,
because you don't want this to go on too much longer.
no, it's been very ragged stuff from Australia now. But early on they got the wicket. What was it? Second ball of the day.
Second ball,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, Barrett bowled by Boland. His second wicket. He's bowled very, very well. And at that stage when the score, even after a little mini fight back from Jadeja and Rahane, the score was 6 for 152. And I tweeted out that I thought Australia were on track to enforce the follow on. But then things have unraveled very
of
quickly.
course you tweeted that, Menace.
Big mistake. Um, so Rahane survived an LBW on 53.
Yep,
After that, he brought up 5,000 test runs, and then he was dropped on 72 by Carey. And then Thakur was out LBW off Cummins, and then on the replay it showed he had a no ball. So, and there was
unbelievable.
multiple chances, ordinary stuff. Positives for the Australian though, Charbel. I thought Scott Boland looks made for this
Yeah,
tour.
yeah,
He
for
he
sure.
almost looks like the first bowler picked. Because
Yeah.
Cummins can't keep his foot behind the line. So, it doesn't matter if you're getting wickets. If you keep bowling no balls, it's not going to matter. So,
Oh, he's got to sort that out. He's got to sort that out. But yeah, I mean, when people say they prefer Boland over Hazelwood, for the Ashes to start off with, I'm not going to argue with them. Because of Hazelwood's lack of cricket, but how good Boland is, and these conditions are tailor made for him. He hits the spot. I'd like to see England try Bazball against him. That's for sure.
yeah, Ricky Ponting was saying something interesting on the coverage on Channel 7 here that he spotted Scott Boland in the nets, working relentlessly on finding his length on English wickets. And he didn't even have a batter in the nets. He was just concentrating on what the length is
Yeah.
on these wickets to hit the top of off stump, because obviously slightly different to Australia where you get a bit more bounce.
Yep.
And he really looks to be hitting a consistent length. I also thought actually good signs from Mitchell Stark swinging the ball into the right hander at times. He's been a little bit all over the place at times, but I still think there's actually really good signs there, because when Stark's bringing the ball back to the right hander, that's
Hundred
when he's
percent.
bowling well.
100%. And you know, we need that for the Ashes, I think, because Stark brings so much quality. that wicket-taking threat. You know, he can go for runs, but when you've got a well-rounded attack like Australia do, it's okay to have a bowler like Stark who can get you wickets in spades. So, yeah, he's at his best when he's swinging the ball, Mitch, and I think he'll be very important for the rest of this game, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said, Ajinkya Rahane, 89 not out, approaching a century. I mean, Charbel, what have you made of his resurgence? You've been watching him very closely during the IPL and then into
Yeah,
this
yeah.
series. I mean, it is a lovely story. Australians saw him play so well in that series that India won here, that century at the MCG, that really turned that series in some ways. And
Yeah.
again, this is a match turning innings. Well, what have you seen from him
I
since he's
mean,
come back?
the IPL form was a shock to everyone. I think
Mhm.
sort of Harsha Bogle put it perfectly. It's like it's a sort of resurgence that no one saw coming in terms of the T20. He was striking at 200 at one point for the tournament and finished at a strike rate of 170, where his career strike rate's 120. So he's clearly playing with more freedom. He's got a new lease of life. He's looked at this as a great opportunity to sort of finish off his career, the last maybe couple of years of his career, on a high and just go out there and give it his best. And I think he's shown that in this innings. This is Rahane at his absolute best. He's been considered one of India's great overseas players. He's shown why in this test. And he did it at the MCG as well when India were rolled for 36 in Adelaide. He came out and turned the series with the bat as well then. So it's great to see him do well because he's one of the nice guys at cricket and he's got past 5,000 now. So hopefully for our sake, it doesn't go on too much longer, but credit to him. He's a champion.
Yeah, it's a great story. And
Yeah.
Jadasia's 48 off 59, seven fours, 1 6.
Yeah.
Again, just played his usual aggressive self and really important because at that stage Australia were well on top.
Yeah, class act, Jadeja. And yeah, I think getting his wicket last night gave me a lot of hope coming into today because if they were 4 down and Jadeja still in today, I'd be a bit worried. But getting him last night and then the wicket straight away this morning, thought we're looking great, Manners. But yeah, it's gone a bit pear shaped since the lunch break came at the right time for us. There's a bit of frustration there as well, but the lunch breaks come at the right time, and hopefully we can step up the second session.
Yes. Now, in our preview of this match, we sort of went through a rating system. And there is some feeling, Charbel, that I've got this sort of anti-McDonald Cummins agenda going after the way they sort of stab Langer in the back. And before this match, I was, looking at Australia's fielding and looking at Australia's sort of 1%ers, those little things that normally we do right. And actually, those things haven't been happening for Australian cricket since Andrew McDonald took over. And you can say, I'm not saying everything he's done is bad, but, I look at the T20 World Cup where they weren't prepared for that first game, had no thought about net run right, completely shot the defence in the foot in the first game. I look at this last tour of India where for some reason Travis said was dropped for the first test match. They didn't even have Matt Kuhneman in the country when they played that match. So to me, Australia's actually not doing the 1%ers right. Plus that McDonald doesn't seem to make these players train. So I think you can actually see that in the catching.
Gone in hard on him. I'm not sure. I mean, there's been some questionable calls. I agree with you.
Yeah. A lot of the time training's optional for the senior players now. Not all the time. Of course, they train and they work very hard. But maybe the intensity's dropped off a bit since Langer left. And,
I mean, Langer's a very intense guy. Langer's a very intense guy.
2 no balls, drop catches, poor selections. I mean, this is not the classical Australian team. Great players nonetheless.
Yeah, look, if we win the World Test Championship final and then the Ashes, I think, we'll be sitting here saying very different things. So see what happens with the guys. I mean, they've been very good in this test match so far. I will say that. I mean, yeah, look, when you go back to the World Cup last year, that was an abomination. And I thought the guys. Do you think
I've got a point, Charbel? I'm going to put you on this. Do you think?
I mean, look,
I've got it. You might not have to be as intense for me, but do you think I've got a point that Australia's 1%ers and the catching just hasn't quite been there in the last year or so?
I mean, look, we were one of the top teams in the championship cycle when it came to catching efficiency, weren't we? We were up around 80% thereabouts. Okay. I think it's been okay, and sort of Green has been very good in the gully and all that.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, look, this first session's been a shocker. So I mean, look,
Maybe I'm just too
there's
upset
been
after that.
yeah, I think so. I think there's been some questionable decisions. I mean, the Travis Head one in India for sure. I mean, they talked about his record in India, and I get it, but he deserved first crack, and then he came back and played brilliantly.
Do you think
And
Cummins is a good captain? Do you think he's a good captain? Because I think the thing is, he's a good
it's a good
leader.
question.
He's a good
Yeah,
leader, but he's not a good captain.
I think tactically there's some gaps there, and there's some things to learn. I wouldn't write him off as a captain. But there's definitely some things to learn and some gaps there. I thought I think sometimes he lets things drift too much. I don't know if you feel the same way, Menas. I think it happened in India at times as well, where Steve Smith was always on his toes and always looking to make things happen, but Cummins sort of let things drift. I think back to the Akshay Patel partnerships in that second test at Delhi. Steve Smith let things drift. Cummins let things drift a little bit. So similar in this sort of first session as well, where you know no lion there for a little while, and sort of everything was just drifting along and not sort of taking the game by the scruff of the neck there when you had India on the mat. One thing I said yesterday was the one thing I don't want to see from Australia is to take the foot off the throat, because when India have had the foot on our throat the last 5-6 years, they've never let up, right? So I
Yep,
want us to return the favor.
I
I
agree.
want
They
us to
should be.
return I wanted us to
They
return
should
the
be
favor.
batting again already.
100%. We should be 20 overs into our innings by now, honestly. And, we've let them off the hook a little bit. I'd still say we're well on top, but with some rain forecast the last couple of days, you don't want to mess around too much, and put yourself in a position where you're sort of rushing to try beat the rain and beat India to win the mace at the end of it. So, yeah,
Because
hopefully this second session will
with
improve our mood.
with the Lion thing, I mean, we were previewing the Ashes with Dan Norcross, and he was saying that this Duke's ball has been getting a bit soft. So, like
Mm,
Cummins' thinking would have been, let's wheel the fast bowlers through while the ball's hard. But I just reckon that's one dimensional. If you've got
but
Jadeja
not
out
only
there
that,
playing well, change the pace, bring on line. It doesn't matter if
correct.
the ball's still hard.
But also Rahane, you look at how much analysis and data is done. Rahane's had his problems in the past against off spin, and Nathan Lyon's given him trouble in the past too. So to not try him earlier was a bit confusing for me, particularly when the partnership's crossed 100 now. Even when the partnership crossed 50, 60, you could have tried Lyon at that point. I know there was some movement for the seamers, but you'll have a seamer right at the other end. That's the whole point of having Lyon in the side. He allows you to rotate your fast bowlers, and he can hold up an end for you and pick up wickets. So that was a bit strange.
And I do have a theoretical issue with generally fast bowlers with as captains, because
Yeah.
it can work sometimes, and this is not a blanket rule, but I think
Mm.
too often the modern generation thinks, oh, I'm going to reinvent the wheel, when actually there's a reason you just let fast bowlers concentrate on what they do when they're in the
That was
field.
my concern when,
And
when
and is this
Payne
diminishing
lost the
Cummins' performance? Like 2 no ball wickets. Would Cummins have done that if he didn't have the stress of captaincy?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
mean, it's hypothetical, but it's just,
Look,
so
difficult
yeah.
job. It's a difficult job to be a pace bowler, and it
Bring
can be done,
Smith
but
back.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to. I would have had Smith back when Payne was relinquished of the role, but yeah, I mean Cummins has done well to date. His record is good, but yeah, I think the tour of India and now this tour of England, they're the two toughest, and we'll see how he goes.
Definitely, this is a big legacy piece for him.
Mm.
All right, so that's our wrap for the lunch on day 3 from the World Test Championship. As I said, we'll just be recording as much as we can throughout this match. So yeah, it was great that you could jump on Charbel. Now tell me, where can the listeners find your work?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at crick_blog. And then you can see my website there, crickblog.net, and also the Crickblog podcast. So love to cover the game of cricket. And yeah, that's where you can find me. Thanks, Menace.
Terrific stuff, and great news for Cricket Unfiltered fans. And Sharby, you'll have to come because you're in Sydney. We are doing our first ever live show,
I did see
celebrating
that.
10
Yeah.
years of the podcast in August. So October 14th, Jaleesa, Paul, and I in the room together for one night only because of HR issues between Jaleesa and Paul. So I've worked through them. We've got the clearances for this performance. So tickets are on sale now at the Factory Theatre. So you can just search Cricket Unfiltered Live in Google, or the link is in all the podcast episode notes. But buy tickets. It's a small theatre, so it's going to sell out quick. Don't want you to miss out. But thanks
Sounds
everybody.
great.
Yeah, come along, Charbel. Thanks everybody for
Yeah, I
listening.
should.
for Cricket Unfiltered, and we'll be back soon.